Namaskar and welcome to this edition of Weekly Dialogues in Jaipur Dialogues. And I have Professor Subhash Kak with me. Professor Subhash Kak is the Regents Professor of Computer Science in University of Oklahoma, Stillwater. He is also a visiting Professor of Computer Science in JNU, and he is also a member of Prime Minister's Science, Technology and Innovation Council. We have had a few dialogues earlier with Professor Subhash Kak. Namaskar and welcome, Professor Kak.
Namaskar. Glad to be a part of your show.
Thank you very much. And you have written a lot on the history of science in general, and particularly history of science in India. And history of science in India is something that we learn from you, and it really encourages a lot of people and gives them a lot of self-confidence. One particular aspect of science, that is physics, is something that you have written about. You've even written a book called Mind and Matter, and that deals with Rishi Kaṇāda's Vaisheshika Sutra. So would you like to enlighten our audience as to how far back is the origin of physics in India?
Well, Sanjay ji, glad that you brought up Kaṇāda and Vaisheshika Sutra. The 6 darshans that we have, you have the Vedas, and then you have the Upavedas, the Vedangas, and this and that. Then you have the 6 darshanas. The 6 darshanas, one of them is Vaisheshika, and on the other side you have Nyaya, which means logic. Vaisheshika is the Vishesha properties that we encounter. So it's that's physics, because where do we see Vishesha properties or special properties? These are properties of matter, properties of things around us, which is physics. And then, of course, you also have darshans, Sankhya, which are the various tattvas which constitute reality, and yoga, which means how does it all constitute together in our being. And then Purva Mimamsa, which is what we do in our relationship with the world. And then Uttar Mimamsa or Vedanta. So these are different ways. At first step, you approach reality, and then you had the various shastras, which did all kinds of stuff like botany and Ayurveda and this and that. So you had all kinds of sciences which were a part of our Sanskriti, and we seem to have forgotten it. India is truly a civilization of science. And it's a science not only related to the outer, but also to the inner, in which it's unique, which is the reason why the entire world is still coming to India to understand the mystery of consciousness, which is the very frontier of all of science. Now, let me go back to Vaisheshika. Vaisheshika is, as I said, it's about Vishesha, the Vishesha properties that things have. Kaṇāda did something amazing. He says, look, there are 2 triples associated with the physical reality. One is the triples of things that we see, and where you have various padarthas or substances, and they have various gunas, which have their own specific properties, and then they have kriya, which is their motions. So he says, as far as the outer world is concerned, you should be able to explain away everything in terms of padartha, guna, and kriya, which is absolutely modern. And modern science or modern physics says that you should be able to describe all properties based on atoms and their properties, properties of elementary atoms, and their motions, right? So a molecule, for example, is atoms, protons, neutrons, electrons, etc., etc. So Kaṇāda said this, of course, about 2,500 years ago. Amazing how early on. But then he said that how we make sense of this outer reality is through another triple. all of Vedas is Vidya, triples. Bhu, Bhuha, Swaha, right? Earth, atmosphere, and the sun, or the body, the Annamaya Kosh, the Pranamaya Kosh, and the Manomaya Kosh, if you look within. Again, a triple. So what Kaṇāda said is you have this triple of Sāmānya, which is universal, Vishesha, which is particular properties. Sāmānya is universal properties such as, and Kaṇāda says that, look, an atom, an anu, must be spherical because looking at from any direction, it should be the same. It's a universal law. This is one of the deepest intuitions of modern physics is universality, and that's what Sāmānya is. Sāmānya, Vishesha, and Samavāya. Samavāya is this interface of the experiencing self, which is our mind, and the outer reality, because all of the outer reality is experienced in our minds. So where is that Samavāya take place? And this fundamental concept of quantum mechanics itself, that it's through the interaction that properties become apparent. In fact, I haven't written it, and somebody needs to do some further analysis of the idea of Samavāya, because it truly conveys this counterintuitive notion that it's through interaction that one obtains understanding of reality, because before interaction it's something else. And so you had Kaṇāda speak of this, and you also spoke of 4 different kinds of anu, of atoms. I was very disappointed. A few months ago, I downloaded the 9th grade NCERT textbook on physics, and it has a chapter on atoms. And the very first paragraph, it mentions Kaṇāda and Vaisheshika, but it describes it incorrectly. And I'm shocked that the editors of that volume are not aware of Kaṇāda's Vaisheshika Sutras, and did not double check to see what they were writing was true, was accurate. So what it says is that Kaṇāda, somebody made it up, obviously. Kaṇāda says there should be anu, because as you keep on subdividing matter, the smallest element that would be, or the smallest part that would be, is the anu. Totally false. That's not what Kaṇāda says. What Kaṇāda says is there are 4 different kinds of anu corresponding to the mahābhutas. And the mahābhutas are Prithvi, Apa, which means water, Tejas, which means fire, and Vayu, which is the 4th one, and the 5th is Akash. So corresponding to these 4, you have the Prithvi anu, the Apa anu, the Tejas anu, and the Vayu anu. The first 2 have mass. The first one gives a real solidity. Every substance has all the 4. It's not that something is liquid and something is water. No. That's not the meaning, because that's what the common meaning associated with these 4 anus would be. No.
Except Akash is different.
Yeah, Akash is different. Gold itself, Swarna, gold has all these 4 anus in it, because you take gold, it's all solid, you heat it, it becomes liquid, so it has that Apa anu also in it. Then you heat it further, it evaporates, it becomes fire, so it has the Tejas anu also in it. And then if you leave it for a long time, it loses mass, so that is Vayu, so it goes away. And this, it's astonishing, corresponds to what modern physics has discovered. There are 4 stable atoms. The first is proton, the second is electron. Proton give most of the mass to matter. The second is electron, which has a mass which is 1/1700ths of the mass of the proton. The third is Tejas, or photon, which has no mass. And the 4th is neutrino. Neutrino is associated with the loss, in the weak force. It leads to decay. Through intuition, through his mano shakti, through his prajna, Kaṇāda discovered that there are 4 stable atoms. And these are the 4. And then it's the combination of these. You have dyads, you have these anu in combinations, which lead to molecules and so on. So this is an amazing, amazing thing. The first translation of Kaṇāda's Vaisheshika Sutras from a scientific angle. There are philosophers who have done it, but they were talking about philosophy. They're not talking of physics. The first one was by me 4 years ago, and I'm hoping that physicists in India and other scientists would examine this amazing classic that India should be proud of. It's one of the greatest books ever written, greatest shastras or scientific texts ever written. And some of you may know that it was well known to people like Vivekananda, and it even had an influence on modern science. I'll be happy to tell you Sanjay ji, if you want me to.
Yes.
Okay. So what happened was Vivekananda was it was in the US, was in New York in 1898 on his 3rd or 4th tour of America. He first came to America in 1893, the famous speech he gave at the Parliament of Religions, which electrified the world. He was again in 1898, and there was the world's most famous actress of her times, a French woman named Sarah Bernhardt. And she was with her group or troupe. She was visiting US and she was in New York, and she knew about Vivekananda. So she threw a party in New York, and she also invited the most famous engineer and scientist of the late 19th century named Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla was the inventor of the alternating current protocol and the alternating motor, AC motor. He was the inventor. So the two of them met, and she wanted Vivekananda and Tesla to meet. So the two of them met. How do we know? Because Vivekananda wrote about it in a letter to one of his disciples, and Tesla wrote about it in his diary. And in that, Vivekananda told Tesla that, look, you are interested in transmitting energy wirelessly according to Vedic physics. And by Vedic physics, he meant Vaisheshika. He says it is possible to convert matter into energy. So, Nikola, why don't you try to show using your science that matter and energy can be converted to each other, because that's what Vaisheshika says. And Tesla said, okay, I will do it. And Vivekananda told him that if you do it, not only would it be good for your science, but it will also establish Vedic science as the foremost physical science. Now, we know that although Tesla promised to do it, he was unable to do it. And there's a story that Tesla, who was a Serbian, one of his correspondents was the first wife of Einstein, who was a Serbian also. And that's where Tesla told that lady, I forget her name, that, look, this is what you should be working on. And there's also, in history of science, it's known that Einstein's most important paper on theory of relativity was initially co-authored with his wife, and he took his wife's name out only when the proofs came in. So who knows? Vivekananda's exhortation to Tesla, based on his knowledge of Vedic physics, which is Vaisheshika, played a role in the very development of modern physics. And certainly it did play a role in quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is the deepest science, foundation of all of science. And one of the two creators of quantum mechanics was this Austrian Erwin Schrödinger, who was a Vedantin. He would always go wherever with Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita with him. And Schrödinger mentions in his own autobiography that, look, the central idea of quantum mechanics, that there should be a superposition of all possibilities in a state, came to him from the Upanishadic Mahavakya, I am Atma Brahman, that this Atman is equal to Brahman. So Indian science, Indian physics has already transformed the world. We should not forget it.
In particular, in Vaisheshik, you mentioned in your article also, the idea of observer for the first time is mentioned in Vaisheshika Sutras of Kaṇāda.
Not only the observer, I forgot to mention that the Vaisheshika Sutras of Kaṇāda also has laws of motion, almost exactly the same as Newton's laws of motion that are so famous. For example, one of his laws of motion is karya virodhi karma. That action is karma virodhi karya or karya virodhi karma. That action is opposed by reaction. Karma is action, is reaction. You know, whatever we do.
I have the article open in front of me. If you want, I can read it out.
Yeah, please do, because I forget the exact word. Yeah.
The first one, law 1, is sanyoga bhave gurutvat patanam. That is, in the absence of conjunction, gravity causes objects to fall.
Which means that's the only, gravity. So that's how things fall. Otherwise, they will keep on moving without stopping, which is Newton's first law of motion.
And law 2, you divide it into 2. Law 2a is nodana vishesha bhavo nordhyam na tiryag manam. In the absence of a force, there is no upward motion, sideward motion, or motion in general. That is the second
right.
A. And law 2b, nodanadadya mishoha karma tat karma karitach sanskaraduttaram tathottaram mutarancha. The initial pressure on the bow leads to the arrow's motion. From that motion is momentum, from which is the motion that follows, and the next, and so on similarly. And law 3, of course, is karya virodhi karma.
Which is action is opposed by reaction. Amazing. We should, if for nothing else, we are not saying that we need to reject the West. No, we love the West. We love all science. We love Western science. It's all universal science. But let's not shortchange our youth by not telling them of this amazing tradition of science that is a part of our history, and of the amazing geniuses, these rishis who saw all this knowledge, which people marvel about. That this is something that should inspire us to take leadership in science and not just do, second tier, third tier work, or just do this combinatoric, you have this formula, you change this parameter, change that parameter, because that's what most of the research is about. That's not really revolutionary work. And the world does need revolutionary physics right now. And Sanjay ji, the reason for that is that physics is in a state of great crisis. All of physical laws cannot explain cosmology, because the speeds with which galaxies are moving and all of that, they're totally counter to either Newton's laws of gravitation or Einstein's. So that's why physics is being forced to postulate 95% of dark matter and dark energy. Now, it's quite possible that the solution to that might be in the sutras that Kaṇāda gave. Maybe it might be something to do with the way we are observing the universe. And it's not that we really need dark matter and dark energy, but our definitions, our starting point is wrong. And that's where the solution might be in a better understanding of that idea of Samavāya, which is where the subject, namely us, the observers, interact with the outer reality. So I think this is something that Indian professors and philosophers and other scholars should get on to reading and studying, not only to inspire young people and students, but also to get inspired to look at the big challenges that modern science is facing.
Also, the idea of consciousness.
Oh, absolutely. The ultimate frontier of all of science, not only from the perspective of physics, but also from computer science, from neuroscience, and psychology, is that of consciousness. Who is the subject? Now, the humdrum answer that is provided in everyday stories that we read in scientific journals is that you have physics leading to chemistry, chemistry leads to biology, biology leads to brain structure, and it's the complexity of the brain structure that consciousness arises. But there's really no reason why it should suddenly arise. And besides, if you had consciousness as separate for each sentient being, then you would not be able to explain phenomena such as Srinivasa Ramanujan coming up with all these formulas or all this mathematics. He would wake up and he would say that goddess Namagiri she dictated this formula to me, which is his way of saying that he got it in his mind's eye, and it's correct. He can't explain where it came from. So consciousness has got to be something larger than just random activity inside our brain. And that's what Vedanta is. That's the very heart of the Vedas, that all of this reality is within consciousness. It's not that consciousness is something, a phenomenon that emerges out of physical reality. And this is the most subtle thing. It is something that science or scientists in all these areas are struggling to express in a fashion so that it will then complete the outer sciences as we know it. But as the Mundak Upanishad tells us, that look, you have the apara vidya and para vidya. Apara vidya are the outer sciences, which can be described by language. And para vidya is the science of consciousness. It's the science of the Atman. And so what has really happened is that the entire world is now ready because of the expansion and growth of the outer sciences of the aparavidya, is ready to receive paravidya. And paravidya is what Vedas are all about, is what the heart of yoga is, what the heart of Sankhya is, as Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita. You have Sankhya Yoga, and you have Karma Yoga, you have various yogas which take you to that point of that Samavāya, of that interaction between our mind, which is also an instrument, antahakaran, it's not the real self, and the self, which is the same for all of us. So we are almost there, and I think that will be the fulfillment of the Vedas. That will be where the whole world will change. I think India and Indian wisdom and Indian sciences are going to play a central role in the evolution of sciences all over the world. And this will bring universal knowledge to everybody. It's not something that's got to be, just kept to people out here. No, this belongs to everybody. We should be the ambassadors to take it to all corners of the world.
Fascinating to talk to you as always, Professor Kak. It was a wonderful exposition of a very difficult subject. I must say that I have interacted with a lot of people, but most of them have very foggy idea about Vaisheshika Sutras. And of course, you also written on Patanjali Sutras, but I also think that Vaisheshika and Patanjali Sutras, they do work together. And we will be picking your brain sometime on Patanjali Sutras also. Thank you very much. It was wonderful to have you here. Once again, thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay ji.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.